Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, which is the Pensions Data Exchange in Sage 50 Payroll. My name's Alice. I'm one of your hosts and presenters for the session, but I am also joined by my colleague Duncan. We'll both be taking you through the webinar today with a few sections each, so Duncan will be back shortly. Let's also take a look at what we're going to cover in this session. So I'll begin with setting up PDX, a look at what the Pensions Data Exchange is and how to set this up, including a demonstration going through all of these different setup steps. Duncan will then be back to go through importing pension updates, so how to import opt-out notices and any scheme changes that you might receive from your provider. Duncan will also be showing you the send pension data option, so how to send enrolment and contribution files directly to your pension provider each period. And then I'll be back for that last section there, troubleshooting. So we do have a selection of handy top tips from us, just to help you kind of troubleshoot any issues or if anything's kind of not looking as you're expecting. But let's get started with this content then. So setting up PDX to begin with. So what is the Pensions Data Exchange? Well, it allows you to send and receive pension data directly with 3 compatible providers, and these are Nest, the People's Pension, and Smart Pensions. Today we're going to be covering an example with Nest, but if you do use either of the other pension providers, the setup process for them is largely similar, so you will still be able to get a good understanding of what to do and kind of where everything is from the session today. And also something to note, if you aren't with any of these compatible providers, you can still use the pensions module without PDX enabled. So you won't be able to use PDX, but you can still use the pensions module. And instead what you'll do is export CSV files and upload these to your pension provider portal instead. But that is what PDX does. And before you do begin using it, you will of course need to set it up. And there is a few things to check before that actual setup process. So we'll go through these now. First of all, you do need to have the pensions module and PDX activated. Now the pensions module is an additional module for Sage 50 Payroll. You would be able to subscribe to that if you aren't already. And as for PDX, if you're unsure whether this is activated or not, in Payroll you can check. So you can go to your pensions module settings, which you can find in the company tasks. And once you're in there, if you've got this button, which I've highlighted on the slide, which just says Set up Pension Data Exchange, that means you do have PDX activated. So you're ready to go, you're ready to get that set up. If you don't have that button there, you will need to contact our technical support in order to use PDX. They will just need to activate that for you. Next on the list, you do need to have your Sage account login details to hand. So this is the email address and password for that. And as mentioned, your pension provider does need to be either Nest, the People's Pension, or Smart Pensions. Along with these, do make sure you've got your pension provider login details to hand. So this is going to be the email address and password that you use to actually log into the online portal for your pension provider. You do need that as well for this process. And then last thing on that list only applies to those of you who use Nest. You will need to make sure that you've got your pension groups set up to align to the tax periods rather than the calendar month. If they're not, and that is something that Nest are able to help you with, you will need to set up some new groups which are aligned to the tax periods. So they're the things you are going to need in order to actually set up PDX. And once you've got these things and you're ready to go, you can begin that process. I've made a flowchart here just kind of representing these steps, just a bit more of a visual way of kind of explaining it. But what PDX does is it connects Sage 50 Payroll to your pension provider directly, so both sides can communicate with each other to send and receive information. Now it does look like quite a few steps when you put it like this, but it is straightforward to do. And of course I will be showing that very shortly. For this webinar, we have already set up PDX in Payroll, just ready for Duncan's demonstrations later, but we did capture this whole process step by step, and I have made a video of it, so we can still show that demonstration to you all. So let's go full screen. I'll turn my camera off, and I'll bring up that video, and I'll kind of explain those setup steps as I go. So to set up PDX, there are 2 steps to do this. You've got step 1, which is to register and set up PDX. Then step 2, which is going to be to sign in and update Sage 50 Payroll. Now, before you do this, just a reminder to have those login details for your Sage account and pension account. And always wise to take a backup of your of your payroll data as well, just to make sure you've got everything nice and secure there. You're then going to go to your pensions module settings, which you'll find in the company tasks. And you'll see this button at the bottom, Set up Pensions Data Exchange. And remember, you will only have this if you've got PDX activated. But we'll click on this, we get a little bit of a welcome page to PDX, kind of what it's all about, and a reminder of those 3 compatible providers. And all we'll need to do is click Next in the bottom right. You'll then see these 2 setup steps that I mentioned with Do It Now buttons and tick boxes on the right of those as well. And notice at the bottom right, this Next button, it's actually greyed out, so it won't let you advance until these 2 steps are complete. And let's start with step 1. We'll click on Do It Now. And straight away, we're prompted to enter those Sage account details. So this is the email address and password connected to your Sage account. If you've forgotten your password, you do have the link to reset that at the bottom. And if you are a new user, you do have the option to create an account at the bottom too. We'll click Login. And it brings you to here. So this is the PDX Management Centre, or the Pensions Data Exchange Management Centre. And this is where that connection happens between Sage 50 Payroll and your pension provider. We've got a little tick box here just to kind of confirm and select the company that you want to use with PDX. So as you can see, I've just got a tick in my payroll company. And from here, I just need to click Confirm. We've then got a welcome page for the Management Centre with 3 tabs along the top. We've got Welcome, Manage Pension Accounts, and Manage Access To. So from this welcome page, I'm going to click on Manage Pension Accounts. And this is where we can add our provider account. So we've got 3 buttons, 1 for each provider. In this case, I'm going to click on Nest. This window is then going to ask you to log in with those provider details, so your pension provider login and things. So firstly, you'll enter a description for this account, and this is what you'd like it to show us on the Management Centre. You'll also need to enter your employer ID for Nest. Now, if you're unsure what this is, Nest can provide it for you. And then lastly, you'll just need to enter in the username and password, and this is what you log into your online portal with. I'll just enter those in there. It is required information to actually set up PDX. And then just click Save in the bottom right. We've now got confirmation that we've added details of the pension account with some information on the next steps as well. So here I just need to click Close. And here we can see a table now which is kind of processing and loading. And what that's doing is pulling the pension scheme details from Nest or whichever provider you're with, and pulling that through to the Management Centre. Now just bear in mind with that processing, it can take a few moments. It does depend on a couple of different factors. But once it does pull through that information, you'll be able to see it populates this table. So it's pulled through my pension schemes from my Nest portal. We've got my provider, the scheme description, scheme reference, employee and employer contributions, and lastly we do have this column called Assigned Company with a red ring round it. So all I need to do here is assign a payroll company to my pension scheme that's pulled through, and that's going to connect them. So see how I hover over that red box. It does give a bit more information as to kind of what we need to do and any changes that we need to make. I just clicked on that red box and it's come up with an Edit Pension Scheme window. And I just need to connect this to my payroll company. Now, one important thing I do want to point out in this window is this little box here. So this is a box where you can enter the date that you've last successfully submitted or uploaded pension information to your provider. You can leave this blank, but for example, let's say I'd already sent all of July, August and September's pension data to Nest prior to setting up PDX. I could actually enter the date, like the process date in Payroll of when that last successful submission was in September. And what that would do is stop the send pension data option in Payroll pulling through all of the historical information that's already been sent. So it stops any kind of duplicate information coming through. And instead, you'll just be able to submit your pension data from the date, from the kind of period after the date that you pop in here. So if you've already sent information to your provider, make sure you enter that date. But alternatively, maybe if you're a new company and you've not made any submissions to your provider just yet, you can leave this blank like I am. And what that's going to do is ensure that all of the pension data will pull through in the send pension data option, which Duncan will be showing you shortly. But once you're happy with the date or you're happy that it's blank, you just need to tick the the payroll company to link it to and click OK. I'll do the same with this next one as well. So again, leave that date box blank in this case for me. Pick that company and click OK. And now that I've done that, just notice these red boxes around the assigned company have gone. So we've made that change that we need to. But of course, remember, if you do need to find out kind of what you need to do with those red boxes, hover over them with your mouse and it will give a kind of message as to what's going on, maybe if there's an error message or something that you need to add. But that's step one done. So we've registered our company and we've set up PDX on the Management Centre. So we can tick that box there next to step one. And it's now time to move on to step two of the setup process, which is to sign in and update Sage 50 Payroll. So I'll just click Do It Now on step two. And straight away, you will get this window to log in and authenticate your account. And again, this is going to be your Sage account details, so the email address and password. Same options at the bottom if you have forgot that password. But I'll enter that information. And once I click Login, what this is then going to do is retrieve the information from the Management Centre. So we can see it pulls that through. Again, this can take a couple of moments depending on kind of how much it's pulling through. But once it does bring this through from the Management Centre to Payroll, it's going to be a case of matching these schemes. So what we'll be able to do in the top left is select the scheme. So let's start with my weekly one. And we're going to move across to the top right box and match it to my Nest pension scheme in Payroll. So select that there and just click Match Scheme. You can see it moves to the bottom left now into the schemes you're currently matching section. And let me just do that with my other scheme as well, just to show you. So I'll go up and select my monthly one, move across and select my pension scheme in Payroll, and then match that scheme. And that kind of connects them together there. I'll check over these details in the bottom left section, just make sure that's all correct. You do have the option of unmatching if you need to. If you've done something by mistake, you can unmatch it again and kind of go through that process again if you need to. But I'm happy with those details there, so I'm just going to click on Next in the bottom right. From here, we get this just to review our matched schemes. And something to notice on the right-hand side, we do have another red ring here. So there is something we need to do here, and that's just to select which scheme we want to use as default. Now, it doesn't really matter which one you select here. I always advise choosing the one with the most employees. So I've selected my weekly scheme. That red ring disappears, and I can click Save in the bottom right. When I do click Save, we can see that I'm prompted to take a backup at this point before kind of the final changes are made. I would always advise taking a backup here. So I'm going to click yes and work through the backup wizard. Just quickly work through that. And in today's example, I'm just going to call it PDX setup. I'll click save, next and finish. And now that that backup's been successful, we'll see a finish button in the bottom right now too. So that is actually step 2 complete. I can tick the box there, click next, and that is us all done. So we are now ready to use PDX to send and receive pension information. And we can click finish in the bottom right. And then we just need to save those pension module settings. So that is the 2 steps there to set up a PDX. Perfect, and let's bring those slides back. We will have a little bit of a recap of that process too. So just back to this flow chart now. So to set up PDX, what you're going to do is use your Sage login from Sage 50 Payroll to register the company. You're going to add your provider, and you're then going to log into your pension provider account to pull through those details back to PDX, assign a company to the pension scheme it's pulled through, and then kind of match this back in Payroll. So all that's doing is connecting Sage 50 Payroll to your pension provider via PDX. And this chart, it does show both of the setup steps combined, but yeah, overall we can see how it kind of connects to each other. But that is the end of the setup process. It is now time to bring back Duncan, who's going to be going over importing pension updates and the send pension data option as well. So it's over to you, Duncan.
Thanks so much, Alice. So that was your setup process. Once it is set up, you can then start using PDX as part of your usual pay run. And there is actually 2 elements to this. There's a step at the start of your pay run that you can complete to import any pension updates from your provider. And then there's the step to actually send the pension data and any enrollment information to them. And just to explain where that all fits into your payroll process, we've got on the slide the 2 PDX options highlighted, both in the payroll tasks, which you'd find on the left-hand side of the screen when you choose the payroll options. And also for any process map users, I've highlighted the tasks there in the process map. So import pension updates is at the start of your pay run. So any opt-out details or scheme changes can be put in place. And then once you've done your pension assessment and you've updated records, your post-update task is when you would send the pension data to your provider. So I have got a demo to play of sending the pension data, but before I do that, let's just discuss importing pension updates in a bit more detail. So depending on which provider you've linked to, there is certain information that can then be retrieved from the provider and imported directly into your pension assessment or into your scheme settings. So when you run this task, it will open up the window that you're seeing on the screenshot there. And if there is any opt-out information for you to import from your provider, it will appear on the Import Data tab. So what you'll then be able to do is to import things like the opt-out date. And when you go into the pension assessment, that employee will be automatically opted out with any necessary refund calculated for you. The other thing this option can be used for is for scheme updates. So if, for example, you've added a new group to your Nest account, the Management Center would be able to pull that through. And if you've made any changes to sort of default contributions, you'll see these updates and you'll be able to sync them with the pension schemes set up in Payroll, so that everything in the Management Center matches what you've got in your payroll data. Now, like I say, I can't show you these steps in a demo, but if you have a look at the link on that slide, there are some screenshots of scheme updates and matching schemes, and it also gives you an explanation of how that works. So assuming you've done all of that and you've entered your employees' payments, you can then do a pension assessment in the usual way. And by doing a pension assessment, that will auto-enroll anyone that needs to be put into the pension scheme. It can also be used to manually enter opt-out details, and it'll show you the contributions for the current period. And once you've saved that pension assessment and you've updated records, that is the point at which you would send the pension data. So like I say, I have recorded a demo of this one, so I do want to show you that. So what I will do is I will just go full screen for you. I will bring that demo up, and then we shall work through those steps. Okay. So in the demo, we're going to show you the 3 steps involved in being able to send pension data to your provider. So you must run your pension assessment first. And it's important to note that whenever anyone is enrolled into a scheme, the pension assessment does it. You don't enroll them manually, and that ensures the pension data is provided. You would then need to update the records, as it is the updated information that's included in the data sent, and then you're ready to send the pension data to your provider. So a quick look at the pension assessment. So this becomes part of your payroll process. Once you've entered everyone's payments, you can go into the pension assessment screen. We'd always recommend that you take a backup before a pension assessment so that it would be possible to undo any changes if that was required. And in this particular example, this is the first pension assessment I've ran since setting up the pensions module. And as you can see, I've got 3 eligible employees. So the first 3 on my list are eligible, and they've all been auto-enrolled for the first time, and they've made their first contributions into our weekly pay pension scheme. So once you've reviewed the information here and you're happy with it, you can close out of the pension assessment and then continue with your pay run in the usual way. So that would involve producing your pre-update reports and pay slips. And then before you can think about sending the pension data, you will need to update the records so that all of the contributions for the current period become historical data. So that's what we're going to do in the next step. We're going to run update records. You'll see that you get a reminder, which you can switch off if you've already read this in the past, that tells you need to do a pension assessment first. So really important to always do an assessment in case you've got anyone being put into the scheme. I'm just going to go ahead and click continue and yes. And then we can update the records for our weekly paid employees. And you can see there the confirmation message, and the last updated date in my employee list is showing the 7th of June. That was the pay date that I used in this particular demo. And that is also the date of the pension contributions we're going to send to our provider. So only at this point is it possible to send the pension data now that the records have been updated. So let's take a look at that in a bit more detail. So you'll see it's just after the full payment submission and FPS adjustment, your send pension data option. And what it will then do is it will connect to Pensions Data Exchange, and it will put together the submission information for what you need to send to your provider. So I'm just going to maximize this to get a closer look. And keep in mind, this is the first submission I've ever done from PDX. And you'll see in the to send column, we've got 1 submission that we need to send. We then have a grid of information showing things like the employee details, the first day of the tax period that the submission relates to. We've got groups and payment sources, which are relevant to Nest. And then we've got things like the employee and employer contribution and the type of information that's being sent. So I've got pension enrollments for the 3 employees being put into the scheme for the first time, as well as their first pension contributions. So there'll be a contribution schedule there as well. Now, we can't just go ahead and send this straight away. You'll see that the submit option at the bottom is grayed out. And the reason for that is that we do need to assign groups and payment sources to each of our employees. So that's done by selecting a group and payment source from the drop-down list. So you could do it 1 employee at a time. So if there's just 1 employee that's new to PDX, someone's just been enrolled, for example, you would just need to choose their group and payment source, because if anyone's ever been included in a previous submission, their group and payment source will already be assigned. or you can assign them globally to multiple employees by ticking the box for the employees you want to assign a group to, and then choosing the relevant group there from the drop down. Now you'll see that now we've got a group and a payment source assigned. The submit option is now available to us. There is also an option, if you prefer not to send it direct and you want to create a CSV file that you can upload to the provider's portal, there is a tick box to enable you to do that. But we're going to send it directly. So once you're happy with all of that information, and you can print a summary if you wish to, you would just go ahead and click the submit button there in the bottom right hand corner. There it goes. And that information is then sent to your provider, so Nest in this example, and you can see the details or the status of the submission by selecting the awaiting confirmation tab. So that's showing us the date and time that that submission was first launched, the last time the screen was updated at the top of the screen there. And you can close out of this on check on it later, or if you still have the screen open for any reason, you can click on that refresh icon, so the two arrows at the top, and that will then sort of go away and refresh and check if the submission is still in progress. Now, it depends on the amount of information and the type of information that you're sending, how long this would take. And if you are including any enrollment details with the submission, it can take a couple of hours before you get confirmation that it has been sent. So what you'd likely do in this case is you would close out, and you can check on the progress a little bit later on. So that's exactly what I did in the demo. So let's see if it's gone through yet. I've clicked on to send pension data, and you can see there very quickly, it's telling me that it's already exporting pension data to Nest, and until that's complete, we can't start another export for this provider. So this tells us that it hasn't finished processing. And if we clicked on the awaiting confirmation tab, we can see that that's still in progress. So that was just about an hour later for this particular submission. And then when it has eventually gone through, or maybe the next time you try to send pension data, it's going to connect to PDX. It'll check on the status of previous submissions, as well as compiling the data that it needs to send on your next submission. This can take a little bit of time, maybe 30 seconds to a minute. And once it's complete, we should see some history. So there it is. We've got one submission now in our history. And if we click on that, you can see it's got the date and time that we did the submission, and we can click the option to view details. And we can see as part of that submission, we had our pension enrollments sent for employees 1, 2, and 3. And if I just scroll down slightly for you, we also had the pension contributions for those employees. And that's why that particular submission took a bit longer, because it had enrollments and contributions. And then that history will start to build up with more and more of the submissions you've made. So that's your full process. You do your pension assessment first. You would then update the records. Once you've done that, you can run send pension data in order to submit to your provider. So just to summarize that demo, send pension data can be used to send enrollments, contributions, and in some cases cancellations, so opt-outs that you might have imported from your pension provider. You will need to assign a group and source if it's Nest the first time you do a submission for an employee, but thereafter it will remember the group and source that's already assigned. And you can read more about this process if you follow the link there on the slide. So that's it from me on sending pension data. But I am going to bring Alice back now, who's going to provide some troubleshooting tips for PDX. So back over to you, Alice.
Thank you, Duncan. Yes, the next section is it's just a short one really, but we have put together some troubleshooting top tips that we would recommend. So if you do happen to come across any issues and you're not quite sure how to resolve them, do make a note of these, or of course download the handout to keep a copy of them. So I've got 4 main top tips for you today. First one is going to be to check your process date. So Duncan's mentioned this, but the process date is what determines the information that's pulled through to send pension data. So for example, if your process date in payroll is back in August, but you're trying to submit September's pension data, you would need to make sure that your process date is also set to September, otherwise it's not going to pull through that data just yet. So process date, top tip number 1. Second top tip here is that if you're with Nest, you do need to make sure that your pension groups are set up to align to the tax periods. If they're not, you will need to create new groups with Nest. They are able to help you with this if you're not quite sure how to do it. But if they don't align, you're going to get a bit of an issue and potentially an error message in send pension data. That's basically because Sage 50 Payroll and Nest aren't quite aligning with each other. They aren't quite able to communicate with each other for PDX. Third top tip is to check and refresh the management center. So as we now know, the management center is where you kind of pull through those pension provider details and then feed those back to Sage 50 Payroll. So it's what ultimately connects both sides together. Now, if you are having issues with send pension data or submitting that at all and you can't quite figure out why, I would advise going to the management center, and you can get to that via the pensions module settings in Payroll. I would advise refreshing it and just seeing if it does pull through any error messages. So if I just show you what I mean, I'll pop back to that video from before. So this is the management center. If you do need to refresh it, it's just going to be this icon above the table. So it's the Manage Pension Accounts tab, and it's just going to be this refresh icon. So you'll select your Nest account, for example, click refresh, and it's going to kind of refresh and pull through anything new or any changes. If you do find yourself with a red ring around any of these boxes in here, just remember you can hover over these and it will give a bit more detail as to kind of what the issue is or if there are any changes that are needed to be made. So that's top tip number 3. Definitely go and check that management center. And then lastly, top tip number 4 is relating to all of them really, but if you do come across an error message or you just need a bit of a hand, you're not quite sure kind of where to go with things, but specifically with an error message, do make a note of it in full. So include any dates or numbers that it includes and search for it on the Help Centre. So we've got hundreds of fantastic help articles specifically on pensions alone, including error message specific or pension provider specific ones too. So you could search, for example, sending pension data with smart pensions, and that would bring up a whole load of search results for you with loads of different articles and kind of demonstration videos covering that topic, and it will talk you through those steps. And the same goes with error messages too. If you type in your error message on the Help Centre, you will get an article come up with kind of a bit of an explanation of what's going on and of course the steps to resolve that too. But after that, if you are still having any issues, our technical support teams are fantastic with pensions, so don't forget they are available if you need them. But that is a handful of troubleshooting tips from us. We do also have a link at the bottom of the slide to some common questions when it comes to PDX, so be sure to check those out. But that has brought us to the end of the webinar content for the Pensions Data Exchange. So with that being said, I will pass back over to Duncan for the last time there, and he's just got some further support to go over with you all.
Thanks again, Alice. So yeah, we are nearly at the end of the webinar now, so I'm going to run through some of the further support that is available to you guys. We're going to start with one of our newer services. This is our one-to-one bespoke training options. So if you would like some one-on-one time with a Sage expert, we now deliver a remote training session for you on a topic of your choice, so completely tailored to your particular needs. So that include anything to do with the pensions module, setting up PDX, etc., you can be handheld through the whole thing. And you can get further details by contacting our team on the email address at the bottom of that slide. Also want to tell you about some of our upcoming webinars. So this month has been pension themed, and we still have some live sessions coming up. So we have pensions re-enrollment either tomorrow or on the 29th of October. You can join us for a session on pension calculations. So a bit of an interactive session, that one, with some calculations and a quiz. You can learn more about pension assessment, and we're repeating this session, Pensions Data Exchange, on the 29th, as well as recordings of some recent ones that you may have missed. So all of that can be found at sage.co.uk/webinars or by following the link on the right-hand side of the slide. And if you deal with the HR at your company, we also have our next HR advice webinar coming up on the 6th of November at 11 AM, how to address performance issues in the first 2 years of an employee's employment. So with our special guests from HR Advisor Plus, not to be missed, get yourself signed up to that one as well. Quick reminder, we have an online help centre at sage.co.uk/help. And from there, you will find our dedicated PDX hub, which I think we've linked to there on the handout as well. And we have our training courses available at sageu.com, including e-learning courses, certification, and bite-sized learning. So do check that out if you haven't already done so. So we do have about 5 minutes of the time left, so we're going to stick around a little while longer just to work on the questions behind the scenes if any new questions have come in. So look out for an answer in the Q&A. If you haven't already got the handouts and you'd like them, don't forget to download those from that piece of paper icon on the right-hand side of the screen. And we will be sending a recording of this session along with your follow-up email, which should arrive in about an hour or so's time this afternoon. One last ask from me and Alice is when you leave the webinar today, if you wouldn't mind letting us know what you thought of the session by completing our short webinar survey. We do find all of your comments extremely valuable. It helps us to keep these sessions relevant and to improve them going forward. So let us know what you thought, if you can spend a moment to complete that survey at the end. With that said, we're going to go off and just tackle those last few questions, and I will come back to you when we're ready to say goodbye. So we'll speak to you shortly. Hi again, everybody. Thank you so much for sending the questions through. I think one's just dropped in, so we'll just try and get an answer out to that before we close down. We just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you all for your time this afternoon. We hope you found the session really useful. If you do have any feedback for us, remember to complete that survey on the way out of the webinar today, and we will be sending you a follow-up email later this afternoon, which will have a link to the recording. So feel free to watch that back if there's anything that you missed that you want to watch again. With that said, we're going to say our goodbye. So thanks once again for joining us, and we do look forward to hopefully seeing you on one of our other webinars in the near future. But from myself and Alice, it's goodbye for now.